So I'd like to give you an analogy about this not telling your parents, because that's the first thing the thief does. If a predator wants to start chas v'shalom with one of our children, the very first thing they're going to do is to make sure that the child is separated from their parents. Don't tell your parents. Sometimes they threaten they'll hurt their parents, or they just say it's a secret between us, or I'm going to give you a treat. So this is what your children should be trained. If anybody tells you not to tell mommy or tati, you come and tell us right away and we'll give you a treat. True story. About 10 years ago, I did the first class of this nature with parents in my yeshiva. I did it right before the summer. I did a mandatory sign-in workshop. I asked all the fathers and mothers who are parents in my yeshiva to come in, and I spoke to them exactly like this. And one of the things I told them was to tell their children, not, if somebody tells you not to tell your parents, come and tell us. This was in June. A full year later, fast forward a full year later, Shavuos time, a general studies teacher, true story, a general studies teacher in my yeshiva was doing a project with the kids. And it involved making flowers for their home. They're going to bring flowers to their mommy. So they sat there cutting out the papers and made flowers out of it and glued them together. And then they laid them out to dry. And the next day they were going to color them and take them home, paint them and take them home. Okay? You figured out what the story is? There you go. So the Mora goes after the first day and tells the kids on the way out, shh, this is a surprise. Make sure you don't tell mommy about this. Okay? True story. And in all innocence, she didn't, she said, shh, don't tell, it's a big surprise, don't tell mommy. The Talmidim in my yeshiva, that grade, was dismissed at 4:15. 4:18, my cell phone started ringing. I promise you, I was, for the next hour, Rabbi Horowitz, my son came home and he said, whatever. And it was the funniest thing, because everybody knew, they knew there was nothing wrong. They were shocked that the kids got it. They said, my goodness, Rabbi Horowitz, it works. They knew it was nothing. But the children burst through the door and they said, Mommy, Mora said I shouldn't tell you. Where's my prize? So it works. I had a pre-1A Talmud on a 5-year-old kid, the beginning of the school year this year. We get subsidized, public bus service from the district. So the bus pulls up in front of the house, opens the door, and my Talmud, this little knee-high to a grasshopper Talmud, looks at the bus driver, and it was a substitute driver. He didn't have this driver before. He looks up and says, hey, who are you? He says, I don't know who you are. So he says, well, I'm a substitute driver. He says, oh, no. My mommy said I can't go if I don't know the driver. He went right back into the house. The mother called me and asked me what to do. So I said, she was thrilled that he did this, but she said it was a little overkill, perhaps. I said, he did exactly what you told him to do. Take him to a bagel shop on the way, buy him a good nash, and drop him off in yeshiva. This stuff works. This stuff really works. That's message number one. Message number two is the issue of personal space. And try to just encourage your children, just like the soup. And the research shows, the experts say that the way to do this is at a very young age. And again, this has nothing to do directly with abuse, but it's a gestalt, it's a mindset. Train the children to this is your drawer, this is your room. People knock when they go into rooms. It's the overall notion of encouraging privacy. And by doing so, when you get your children to think about innocuous, simple things that belong to them, somebody has to ask me for permission if they want to use a toy of mine, come into my room, use this space, then they get this soup idea that we spoke about at the beginning of feeling this is my soup. They say, well, I'm entitled to privacy. I have my own book bag, and I have my own drawer, and I have my own whatever it is, and I have me. So this research shows that this is something that's a very effective tool. Third thing, train your children that people are not allowed to make them feel uncomfortable, and that they have a right to say no to an adult, even to an adult. You see, part of the complication of many of these issues is that some of this flies against what we train our children to be able and fine and deferential to an adult. That's great 99% of the time. The 1% of the time that someone wants to take advantage of them, they may not have the tools and the framework and the self-confidence to say, hey, don't do this to me. So training your children that they can say no to things that make them uncomfortable is an extraordinarily important part of this. And in fact, many victims, I encourage you to read up on a lot of these things and do your own research. Did you Google some of these ideas of preventing children? Do you have a question? I'm sorry. Part of part and parcel of this is this issue of, you'll read that a lot of victims say, I didn't know that, it was, an adult. I didn't know that I could, they didn't feel that they were empowered to say no. I'll tell you another story. This just happened a few days ago during Shavuos. With the great chesed of Hashem, my wife and I are already at anical stage, Kanei Nahara. We have 5 grandchildren, and the oldest is not yet 4. And I always read stories, bedtime stories, to all of our children when they were growing up. So I had the schus to pull off these books that were pull them out of the shelf that were 30 years old, and I was reading to our grandson. Now, since I play a rough house. I do whatever the grandfather does. Act really silly, get on the floor and give him horsey rides, whatever. Start acting like a child in front of them. So because I wind up, playing around, roughhousing, or whatever it is with the cat, I always say, and because of this, I want to train him. So his name is Dovi. I said, Dovi, if there's anything, when I play with you, if you don't like anything, just tell me, don't do it, Zaidi, please, and that's fine. Because if I give him airplane rides, so if he's afraid, so I tell him, that's what I told him. Dovi, if you feel uncomfortable, if you don't want to do it, just tell Zaidi. Shavuos morning, after the all-nighter, he was up early, so I sat down on the couch with him. I was trying to give his mother a break. So I was reading the 3 Little Pigs to him. And it comes the part, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down. So when my kids were small, I used to blow on, I used to I'll blow your house down. So I had read it to him the night before when he went to sleep. I'll huff and I'll puff, and I blew at him, we'll blow your house down. So in the morning, I started to do it. 1 page before already, he said, Zaidi, please don't blow on me, I don't like it. On his own, he's not even 4 years old. He said, could you extremely respectfully, Zaidi, please don't blow on me. So it's empowering children to be able to think like that. Even to a grandfather, if it's something they don't like, they're entitled to say it's okay for them to do that. 2 more things on this issue. We're going to talk about good touch, bad touch, which is another very important thing to speak to your children about. And good touch, bad touch means explain to children that not all touching obviously is bad. People touch you on the hands, they touch you. Certain touching is not good, and probably the most comfortable and tsunua way to do this is to talk, let's say, about a bathing suit. Anything parts covered by a bathing suit, nobody should be touching you on, except mommy and daddy when we bathe you, or when we dress you, and a doctor when he examines you. And the research shows, and the experts say, that it's very important to be specific and not use global terms like older people or people from our family. And because, unfortunately, I know it's hard for you to believe, but just Google it. The research shows that a majority, lots and lots of molestation is done by family members. Uncles, sometimes, people who are family members. So when you use terms, you have to really get out of this mindset that the predator is this weirdo with the raincoat. Many predators are charming, they have great social skills, there's just something terribly wrong with them. Did any of you ever hear of Mel Levine? Mel Levine was one of the outstanding educators in the last 50 years. I really would encourage you to do a Google search on him when you get home, just to understand what a sickness this is and how you do not know who it could be. I heard him speak. I can tell you, I walked out of that room so inspired. He spoke so beautifully. He wrote, he did a lot of great things in his life. He wrote many books on the subject. He was an advocate for special ed kids and kids who were weak, and he wrote brilliant articles and books about different kinds of minds and different types of intelligence, and how, 50 years ago, a kid who was slow, they put him in the corner. He was such an advocate. And about a year or 2 ago, he got some horrible rumors started coming forth. People my age, people 40s and 50s, came forward and said that he molested me during an examination, and there were over 50 people that issued complaints, and he shot himself. He committed suicide a few months ago. And he left a note, don't think that the suicide means that, you know, whatever. The reason I'm telling you is not to point out that there's another sick person, unfortunately, but to tell you that even a charming, world-renowned person who had a following of millions, literally millions of people, he was on talk shows, he was everywhere. Go figure. You can't always figure it out. Therefore, it's important when you speak to your children about these issues not to make assumptions and say that, you know, when you're speaking to children, for example, good touching, bad touching, people are not allowed to touch you, make sure that you don't give global waivers because the kids are listening to you. And if you tell them family members or people that you know are allowed to touch you there, you're setting yourself up, chas v'shalom, for them to blur the distinction between them. So perhaps, I think I would suggest a practical example would be, as I said, father, mother, when they're bathing you, when we're dressing you, grandparents when they're babysitting for you, a doctor when but really keep it limited to that and let them encourage you to tell you if anybody else touches them.